back to Sour SaaS. Today's guest, man, this one hits close to home. When I first got into B2B marketing, he was the brand evangelist at Chili Piper when I first came into the game. And so seeing some of the video content he was doing really kind of led me here to where I'm at now. And so I haven't been able to give him his flowers over LinkedIn, so hopefully I can give him his flowers in person. But he is the head of community and customer marketing at Storylane.io. And so without further ado, I have the king of content, in my opinion, Arthur Castillo on the Sour SaaS podcast. What's going on, Arthur?
Man, thank you for that. That means a lot, dude.
Bro.
That means a lot. Yeah, it's been a journey. I remember waking up one day, and I think you tagged me in that video of like a street interview content.
Yeah.
And I was obviously feeling good about where my career was going, but it was kind of oh damn, this is people are like recognizing like what I'm doing at trade shows and events. And
seriously.
I know Ding and Jake over there were like, yeah, we're pretty inspired by that. We started Event Shark, so it was cool. And I think not too long after, like 2 weeks, I happened to be in Austin and we met. So it was a very like serendipitous moment seeing that LinkedIn post and then
it was crazy
getting a jam with you. So thank you for having me, man.
It felt like seeing an icon in real life because we met at SaaS Stock 2024, I think it was.
I think so.
Yeah, it was crazy. Just question, where did the idea of street interviews like at a trade show come about?
It's a good question. Man, I wish I could remember her name. It actually, it was her idea. I did it once at a trade show. I thought it went pretty fun, but it didn't really take off. And then it almost felt like a recycled idea. We're like, let's get back to that.
Yeah.
I think the idea came from, we had so many folks, so much talent at these conferences. And I'm like, rather than just wait at the booth, why don't we get a little bit proactive? Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate to work with Chili Piper, who was always pretty forward thinking. And we're just like, how do we get more out of these trade shows rather than just waiting for people to come up to us at the booth? I'll tell you also strategically, a lot of these exhibitors at the conference were really good ICPs for us because we had we knew they were spending money on trade shows, but we had a really good trade show use case. But we noticed that when we would just pop up to them and ask them or try and talk, they'd be like, "You spend like $50,000 on this booth. Like we don't want to talk to another booth exhibitor here." Mm-hmm. But that completely changed when we came up with a microphone and a camera. And all of a sudden it was like, "Oh yeah, let's talk more about the business." And then we would kind of slip in, "Oh, by the way, like instead of scanning badges, why don't you book demos?" And that actually became like a good little lead gen for us. So I think it was just always understanding like how do we, almost like on a power dynamic level, how do we show up to their booth without seeming like we're asking for something? But when we came with a microphone and a camera, it was like we were giving them something. And we'd always use the Chili Pepper brand. We'd say, "Hey, we have 80,000 followers on LinkedIn. We'll post it there. We'll get you a little bit more exposure there." And they're like, "Yeah, this sounds good." So it kind of helped. It did two things, right? It gave us more content, and it kind of acted as a lead gen lever to get in front of these exhibitors. Whereas before, when we were trying to break into them, they're just like, "We don't want to talk to you. Get out of here."
That's crazy. Yeah. So since you've been doing SaaS sales and you've done SaaS marketing, now you're sitting at like community and customer marketing. What do you feel like has been the biggest thing that you've learned over that span of time from doing both? I guess we'll start with sales. Like from a sales perspective, what do you think is the biggest thing that you've learned over that time period where you were kind of sitting strictly in that sales role?
Like transitioning into marketing?
Mm-hmm.
I think a couple of things come to mind, and I know we're going to get in customers, so I'll leave that one. But I think in sales, just taking that initiative really came in handy in marketing, specifically on the partnership side. And I can recall, like, Chili Piper already had a good brand, but we would partner with a lot of good companies. And oftentimes my marketing team was like, "How'd you get them to, like, agree to dinner?" I was like, "I don't know, I just asked." Like, it wasn't that, like, crazy to me, but I think coming with that sales skill set, you learn how to be a little bit scrappy. You learn how to reach out to folks. You're used to rejection. So like, I don't know if they would kind of take an ego hit in marketing if like they reached out and they never heard back, but I was like, I'm just going to take my shot. And a lot of good partnerships came from that. So I think, this is kind of a mantra I live by, but ask and you shall receive. I think so many people have self-limiting beliefs or they convince themselves in their head of like, "Oh, no, they wouldn't want to partner up with us." I'm like, you never know unless you ask. So that really helped me coming in, and especially establishing the partnerships angle. I think, probably what we're going to talk a lot about today is the customer side, right? And I think on the sales side, it was very short-sighted not to, after the contract was signed, continue with that customer and see how they're doing, check in on them. We kind of give that job to CS, but there's so much movement in B2B SaaS. People are starting new roles 1, 2, every 3 years, right? And often those people would come back, especially if they had a good experience with your product, and say, hey, by the way, I'm at a new role. I think, I should look into Chili Piper. And I think I'm going to give a shout out to Morgan Ingram here. He probably said this at some point, but like sales reps, you should have an infinite Rolodex, because you should save on Sales Navigator the people that you've demoed, and then also the people that you've closed. And then you're just tracking job changes, right? And if you've done that enough, and if you work for a good company like Chili Piper that has a really good inbound engine, yeah, I don't know how many demos I would give in a year, but that's almost like, let's call it 200 to 300 leads that over a period of 2 to 3 years, they could be decision makers, they could have new budgets. So I think leaning into that and seeing how, establishing that relationship with the customer and actually making sure that they're doing good. I think it's something I learned after the fact, because in sales, I was like, contract closed, I'm good to go. Like, let me pass it off to CS. But for maybe the sales reps that are watching this, I think, that infinite Rolodex of just saving everybody you've demoed, keeping track of the ones that you've closed, and just tracking their job changes, you'll have a ton of opportunities that you don't have to wait for them to come inbound.
Got it. One more question before we hop into the actual first question. What's the story for you to get to Storylane? Like, how'd that come about?
Man, so this was after I had left Align back in March, and had thought at this point I had a good enough network to kind of go off on my own. And I think I still do, but I realized I picked up a couple of consulting clients, but I thought once I announced it to the LinkedIn universe, like, I just have inbounds coming in. That was not the case. There was a couple of people that came inbound, but that's what made me realize you really need a content engine, because it's not up to the folks in your network to constantly keep tabs on what you're doing. You have to be repeating that story time and time again. And it might feel like annoying to you at some point, but I think we've seen even with the LinkedIn algorithm, not all of your followers are going to see your content. You kind of have to keep repeating that to be known for something. And then once, which I don't even think takes a long time, you could probably be known for something if you post consistently about it within 4 to 6 months. So I was kind of learning the hard way, took a little bit of a pay cut. At the same time, feeling a little bit lonely working remotely from home, not having coworkers. So I had always wanted to go to Exit 5's Drive conference. And it was coming up in September, and I think it's still to this day the only conference I paid for out of pocket. And I went down, and on some level I was like, sure, it'd be nice to get business, but I honestly just wanted to be in a room full of marketers. I had done that a ton at Chili Piper. I realized, like, I really like this part. And as I was just meeting folks there, they're like, what are you up to now? What are you up to these days? And I had this concept of customer-led growth, right? So I started telling people this, and they're like, I think you're really onto something. And funny enough, Storylane was there. So Madhav and Akshire, head of brand, were there, and they actually overheard me just talking about customer-led growth. And they're like, hey, by the way, we're actually thinking about investing a ton in customer marketing. We should talk. And that happened on the first night, and I was just like, this is perfect, because now I don't feel like I have to go and earn business. We had a pretty good conversation. But from there, at first I thought it was going to be a little bit of a consulting gig, but then I started to realize, they actually have this full-time role in mind of head of community and customer marketing. So when did that happen? In September. We kind of went through the whole recruitment phase, and then I started early November. So it was really just, again, meeting people in person, talking about what I was working on, and they happened to overhear, and they're like, we think we can work something out here.
All right. So we're going to get to the first question before we do.
Oh, boy.
We don't call it a Sour SaaS for no reason. I've never done this one before, so I'm really praying for you.
Okay. So only I do it, or you do it too?
Oh, yeah, I'm not doing it, no. No, I've learned my lesson the hard way.
Okay. Is it like a grape?
Mm-hmm. It's like a sour grape. It's like sugar and lemon squeeze, all that good stuff to keep it sour.
Okay.
How are you handling it?
So far, so good. I'm cold, man.
Oh, yeah, I know. So I'm going to ask the first question. Because you said something in one of your posts that kind of stuck with me is that customers are not a byproduct, but they're not a byproduct, but they're the actual engine for growth. Can you just break down what that means for you and like what that kind of looks like in practice?
I think, and it's so funny because Chili Piper, like amazing inbound engine. I think when I was a sales rep there, it was almost like 90% of the pipeline came inbound. And now being on the marketing, like I think it was 8 months as an AE there, then went into marketing. It wasn't too bad, by the way. I was like expecting way worse. So I'm like, okay. But I think so many marketers, I mean, we've heard about the attribution issues, but you hear time and time again, like word of mouth is always there. And the more I kind of understood, and when there was gaps in our own understanding of like what in marketing was working, I think it always came back to like word of mouth. And the product was phenomenal. People got a lot out of it. And I think that you could see that in certain Slack communities and people coming inbound and saying, yeah, I heard about it from a friend. So I think like that was one of my first observations of like customers are always somewhere in your engine. And I think when you can't necessarily pinpoint the attribution or where they came from, I mean, I can't guarantee this, but I feel like it always, the buying triggers start with a conversation with a peer. And I think along the way, like I always thought I had such a kind of a random career arc, like starting in sales, then getting into field marketing, community, now customer marketing. And I guess being a buyer on the marketing side really changed how I thought about sales, because I always thought I was decent at sales, but then it's gonna sound bad, but getting demoed from other folks, I'm like, that was it? That's how you sell? I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, we're leagues ahead. But it's so funny because I think oftentimes as a sales rep, you're thinking, if I just show them how cool my product is, they're going to kind of connect the dots. And I think by the time you come inbound, you already know, like you feel this pain, you've narrowed down your vendors of choice, maybe down 3 to 4, and you want the tool, but then you're thinking like, okay, how do I convince, I don't know, Rob from RevOps and Cindy from finance, and then my boss, and then sometimes the CEO gets involved. And that's like the most challenging part of buying. And then we had the sales reps here being like, see how cool my tool is? I'm like, I know it's cool. Like, I know it solves a pain. Help me figure out that whole internal buying process. So I think that was always a big missing part in any sales process. And I think even how we sell, we try and sell to this idea of like the platform does everything you can imagine, you know, like, yes, it can do that. Yes, it can do that. And then if you actually hear these customer conversations, it might even sound like they're pretty shit at this, but they're amazing at that. And because the customer is willing to be so transparent and leading with what they're bad with, but what they're then really good at, it makes it so much more believable as a buyer. And in sales, we don't do that at all. It's like, no, we can do that. We can do that. So I think there's something to be said about what these peer-to-peer conversations offer buyers. And their BS radar is already like pretty high coming inbound. And they know your product isn't going to do everything that you say it can. So they're almost trying to listen to like, what am I missing here? And they don't get that from sales. They often don't get that from marketing either, because we try and portray it as like the all-in-one platform that can do everything. But they would get that from their peers. So that was one thing that I started to understand. And then sometimes when I would talk to other peers, they would say, oh yeah, this is how maybe you could position it with RevOps, or how I got approved, even though I had a tool that did something similar but didn't actually do it. So you're actually hearing from your peers how to go about the internal buying process. But in sales and marketing, I don't think you ever get that. So that was one piece. I can't recall the question entirely.
Yeah, so you were just kind of going in depth on like, what did that mean for you when you said that the customers, like the customers not a product of growth, but they're the actual engine for growth.
Yeah, so that, like seeing that on the buyer side, seeing the missing gaps in the sales process, and then there was like definitely times at Chili Piper where this, I'll still like it's almost this moment that I can see in time. I don't know if I should name drop, but I'll name drop. Hilary Carpio at Snowflake. We were having a dinner in San Francisco. And one of the issues at the time was we couldn't get sales to invite people to our dinners, right? They saw it as like, cool, something marketing's doing. It's not really going to help me drive my deals forward. And there was this one rep, which by the way, I think every company has these more marketing inclined reps that, as a marketer, you just have to find these folks because they're willing to give feedback. They want to get involved in this. I mean, you probably were like this at some level, right? Like wanting to learn more about marketing and be more involved. So I think every marketer should find like the 2 to 3 sales reps, even start with one that maybe are a little bit more marketing inclined, and you can kind of test out different things with them. So this one guy, he knew we were having these dinners. He had a deal stuck in pipeline for I think 4 to 5 months. And he was like, hey, do you think I should invite this founder to this dinner? I was like, absolutely. That's like why we put these things on together. So I'm at the bar with Hilary. This founder walks over, introduces himself. I'm like, yeah, I work for Chili Piper. Hilary's like, yeah, I work for Snowflake. And then he asks her, do you use Chili Piper? And I wish I recorded this. She had like 2 to 3 sentences that she said it. And then he's like, oh yeah, it sounds like a no-brainer. And then the deal closed 2 weeks later. And it just showed the power of like that peer credibility, right? We tried to spend 4 to 5 months selling this founder. Yeah, maybe he believes it. Yeah, he doesn't. Hears it from another peer. 2 weeks later, the deal closes. And I was like, holy shit. Okay, there's something going on here. Like, we have to do more of this. So that became a lot of the basis of like our whole field marketing and these dinners in particular of like, how do we get our customers that are super happy with the product, and how do we make it organic in the room so that we didn't have to present and say, hey, this is why all of you in here should check out Chili Piper. They're hearing it from somebody else. So yeah, that was like, I guess, a couple of experiences that started to shape how I started to think about customers are really the backbone of everything. But I don't think we've ever properly incentivized them, or it's just very much like a hope, like, hey, let's hope our product does well enough that they start to tell their peers. And that happens, but that was the first time I realized, like, oh, you could actually engineer these moments simply by having these dinners and sitting your best customers next to your best prospects.
Oh, that's crazy. How can you tell an organization is looking at customers as a byproduct versus the actual engine? What are some of the red flags or telltale signs for you?
Yeah, I think like the programs, right? And I think almost everybody thinks about customer marketing as like case studies. It's almost synonymous, right? So you can kind of see, maybe even on their website, how many case studies do they have? Do they try and like make it filterable or navigatable for the buyer based on industry or use case or anything like that? Those are good signs. Yeah, I guess how much, if you're kind of doing the whole how did you hear about us attribution, if you're seeing like word of mouth or through a customer or through a friend or anything like that, that's always a good sign. So if they're not kind of investing in that, yeah, if they're not looking for more marketing moments to put their customers front and center, those are some of the telltale signs that like they're not investing in it. And it never made sense to me because like on a lot of levels, customers would do this for free. And there's some like win-win situations for them, right? Where they look good in front of their peers or they get some content out of it themselves. If you have a referral program, there's benefits there. But I think there's so much we can do in terms of making that a focus, putting more resources towards that. And then I'm always thinking like, I guess the radical idea in customer-led growth is, sure, there's marketing opportunities. And I think you need to have that foundation in order to earn the right to sell through them. And everybody tries to rush to the referrals, but if I ask you, I'm like, Isaiah, do you know anybody that's a good fit for Directive? 95% of the time, the response you're going to get is, let me think about it, right? And then that's as far as it goes. At least you asked. That's a good part on the sales side or anybody else, but there's not enough to kind of, you're almost expecting that once you ask once, that they're actually going to come back with 5 names. You have to make it easy for them. If you can say, hey, I notice you're connected to these 5 folks. How well do you know them? Would you be willing to? But I think that's like the last thing that you earn. One thing that I've learned right now in this role at Storylane, we surveyed our customers. And I typically put a customer advocacy menu in front of them, whether it's like, we're in case study, we're going to do in-person events. Would you want to lead an event? Would you want to participate? Be a referral partner or be a reference? I was so shocked at how many were willing to be a reference. But this makes sense in terms of like even the psychology behind it, because in between that Aligned and Storylane stint, I did consult with a couple of companies, and every time I would interview their customers, they would give me some answer of like, you know what, like, yeah, I can refer folks, but I don't want to feel salesy, right? I don't want to be an SDR for your company. But if I know that somebody's valuing your category, I'm happy to speak about my experience. And I think that's a good first step. And my hypothesis is that the more you make it easier to have these reference calls, the more you can reward them, one, for having the call. Two, I think you should cut them in as part of the deal, especially in SaaS. There's so much margins. Then they start to see kind of that light at the end of the tunnel and say, huh, okay, I hopped on 4 calls. Maybe that took an hour of my time, and this company just cut me a check for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Yeah, I can do more of those. And
Yeah.
actually, by the way, I think I do know people in my network that could benefit from this, right? So I think in sales, we probably get that more because we know how much upside there is in commission. But I think as customers, and depending on their role, they maybe haven't seen how much money you can actually make in software sales, in that commission-based sales. So I think it's going to take a little bit of incentivizing them and getting them to see like, oh, these conversations that I'm actually having with my peers are moving deals. And this could be like a pretty good kind of side gig, side hustle for me. And I think that's one of the things that I want to do with this customer-led growth thing, like help people understand that if you're a power user of the tool, there are many ways in which you can monetize that. And I think there's people that have gone off to kind of start their own consultancy or agencies simply by being a referral partner and saying, hey, I was a power user of this. I can help you implement it. And then they're getting paid for the implementation, but they're also getting paid by the software company for getting them to introduce them to these new prospects.
Oh, that's crazy. So how are you looking at, so effectively people say customers that are advocates, and then you got the influencers. Mm-hmm. How would you manage that, like that tension between having an influencer and a customer who's the, I guess, better influencer because they've been a power user or something like that? So how are you kind of balancing that or looking at that?
Yeah, man, there's so many pros and cons here. And I think we're kind of living in the golden age of influencer marketing right now. We're always, I know people always say like B2B is always 5 to 10 years behind B2C. And we've seen how well that works in B2C. But I think we're almost trying to copy and paste that model where like, you can't take a selfie with a software product and be like, buy this. There's way more like like your own reputation and credibility is at stake.
Yeah.
Where you don't want to do that. And we actually saw this happen in influencer marketing where like at the beginning, people would say, hey, I'd pay you, I don't know, $500, $1,000, upwards of that. And be like, yeah, sure, I'll post about your tool. But that actually hurt their own reputation and the belief of their audience that they spent so much time building up, where now they're like, man, it's so obvious this person has never used the tool. They're telling me to check it out, but like it's on the basis of nothing. So now it's almost like, can I believe anything this person posts, right? So I think influencers in the short term really hurt themselves and their audience. I know a couple that, yeah, like their reach started to tank because I think their audience saw them as almost like a sellout, right? I think they learned that hard lesson, and now they're much more picky about who they want to work with. But it seems to be the same pool of influencers, right, that companies are approaching. There's only so many products that you can believe and use in. So it starts to like wear that pool down even further because of the supply and demand. Then it raises prices of these influencers. Like I've heard of influencers that are willing to get like got offered $20,000 to like do a series of like 3 or 4 posts. Insane money.
Crazy.
Insane money. And the crazier part is they're actually rejecting that money because they got burned in the past. And they're like, this is a startup that I don't even know if their tool works. And I don't really see the direct line and how my audience can benefit. So it's just like driving the price up. And I think humans, LinkedIn audience, they're always, they can smell the BS, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't want to be taken advantage of. So because I saw this happening, I always thought like, you're never gonna run into this issue with your customers because they're actual users. They're not having to lie about anything and fluff it up and say, you should check this out. They're literally speaking from experience. Now, the trade-off, of course, with these influencers is they have built-in distribution, right? A lot of them have huge audiences that you're getting access to those. So on some level, I'm not saying like influencer marketing is dead, or I don't want to make those claims. I know we might get a little controversial on this podcast. I think it can be a part of your marketing mix, but it's really more for the brand awareness and just there's so many digital touch points that a buyer has to go through. So I think it's like a good one, but I think right now, for the most part, I'm seeing so many companies, let's say if you had an influencer and customer marketing budget, like 90% of that is going to influencer marketing. And I think there's a ceiling that you'll hit with that really quickly that you'll never hit with your customers. And even Storylane last year, before I joined them, they had a budget earmarked $500,000 for influencer marketing. They couldn't even spend that. They spent $250,000. And it's because that pool of like power users and influencers and that small overlap of people that kind of sit in that middle, there's so few and far between. There's also nothing like really regulating these influencers. Yeah. So a lot of the time they're like, yeah, I have the same amount of followers, but you can kind of tell in how they approach it or really try and understand your product. Like you go through quite a bit. So I saw us at Chili Piper in a line. It's the whole 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your influencers are going to drive 80% of your results. You don't really know until you try that. So I think like I'm trying to bring more awareness to that on both sides. I think on the marketing front, like, hey, take a lot of that influencer marketing budget that you have earmarked and start maybe spreading it across like one influencer you would pay. You could spread that across like 10 customers. I told about the trade-off with distribution, but now you can put thought leader spend, LinkedIn thought leader ads behind that. So that's kind of the trade-off and how much money maybe you'd save on the influencer marketing side, spreading that across. And I think the other part that we just talked about is like power users understanding that companies should use you more in terms of their marketing. So that's kind of the awareness I'm trying to bring of like, yes, influencer marketing is good. I've learned a lot about I've learned a lot about new companies through influencers, but I haven't really learned the depth of their product. Mm-hmm. I think you learn that more through the customers and the power users.
1,000%. I like that. I like that. So you said that the old go-to-market playbook needs to die or is broken at the very least. And now with the customer-led kind of playbook coming in, what do you think from the old playbook kind of needs to really actually die? Like what tactic are we still kind of using that just needs to, somebody needs to stop doing it tomorrow? Like it's over with. Let's go customer-led.
Oh man, it's tough because like I think there's certain things that work just enough to justify like continuing to do it, but I don't know if they're necessarily dead. So this is so tough, man, because if you asked me this question like a year or two ago, I would have said trade shows. Wow. And yeah, this is coming from a guy that like went to field marketing. One, I think a lot of companies, especially startups, invest too early in trade shows. And I saw this at Chili Piper where we go to these conferences and my booth partners or other exhibitors beside me would be complaining. They're like, man, this trade show, like not a lot of traffic. I can't believe we paid this much money. And in my mind, I'm like, man, this is a great trade show for us. But it's because we did so much on brand that people actually sought us out at the conference. So I think I would say you can't look at it in isolation of like, if we spend whatever, 50,000 at this trade show, it should bring this much in. It's a part of your marketing mix. And I think a lot of companies try and shortcut that and not work on their brand and just think, hey, if we buy a trade show booth, like our perfect ICP persona is going to walk by and say, hey, I think I need what you're selling. It's like, that's never going to happen. And then I was running on this whole, hey, let's not do as much trade shows, let's do dinners. But marketers are smart, man. They hear this advice and they're saying, okay, let's do dinners. I was very fortunate at the time at Chili Piper when we were starting this playbook. I think we were one of the first to really invest in dinners. And it also, like, if you're looking at the time after COVID, like people were so eager to get back in with their peers. So I think marketing is all about timing. So I don't know. This is why I struggle with this, because I'm like, are dinners dead now? I don't like, before I could invite CMOs that I had no business talking to. And because we were one of the first to do that, they'd actually reply back and I'd be like, whoa, this is weird. Like CMO from like a $500 million company saying, thank you so much for inviting me to dinner. now they're probably getting 10, 15 of those a week because everybody's doing it. So like, I don't know. It's always like you have to see what's coming up next. So I haven't really answered your question. I think like there was a time where I thought webinars were dead. They're actually like a huge source for us. So I guess I don't know how to answer it, but it's all like cyclical and it's all like timing wise. Yeah. Okay. So maybe if I were to revise my answer, I'd say trade shows if you are like an SMB company without building your brand. I think that's you should start to think about other ways to use that budget instead of spending a lot of money at trade shows.
I'll throw a side question off of that one.
Please, yeah.
Because Madhav said earlier, we were talking about pattern interrupt marketing.
Yep.
And you were kind of just speaking about the cyclical nature of like certain strategies like ebbing and flowing. How do you recognize those patterns of like, this wave is about to, because I mean, you kickstarted the whole trade show content like activation thing. How did you kind of sense like this might not be like this might be at the end of that cycle or the end of the golden age of this particular thing for now?
Yeah. And I'd still think there's like room for it. And I'll tell you, like, it even works on me when people DM me and like versus like them trying to be like, hey, I have these services or I'm trying to sell you this one thing. And then when they invite me on podcasts, it still like triggers my brain being like, okay, maybe and then I like check them out. And I'm like, they don't really have a following, but just the fact that they're inviting me on a podcast makes me think like, okay, I can see the win-win here. Maybe I like speaking on podcasts, but there's something to be said about like using that as a way to break into your accounts. I do see more people doing trade show content. Some of it can be like a little silly. I think like what you're doing here is brilliant, by the way. I did this maybe once or twice at Chili Piper, and that was also very surprising. So maybe this is how you start to, I guess when everybody starts doing it, you have to start to look at what is my unique spin on it, or maybe it's a different format, or maybe it's like really good like understanding it a little bit more. I think short form video, like there's a place for that, and I think it's a less of an ask than a podcast studio, but there's still something psychological about inviting somebody to a podcast. So I think like, when you start seeing a lot of people doing it, I'd always ask like, okay, how do we maybe stand out from what everybody else is doing? There's a first mover advantage. And then I'd say, kind of the second mover advantage is like, how do I change the packaging, the format? In that sense, I don't know if I really answered your question of like how to identify that pattern, but maybe just when you're seeing more marketers do that, same with dinners. And like, I would have died on that playbook, but now I'm realizing like, man, if everybody else is doing it, it's hard to break through the noise. So how do we change that up? It's almost like, when you see people writing about these playbooks, it's almost like probably a little too late.
When every LinkedIn guru is writing on the same playbook.
Yeah.
All right, I for sure get that. Think you can handle another one?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Okay. So just switching gears a little bit, talking more on the dinner or just really word of mouth marketing. I mean, there was a point where some people, kind of termed it dark social, if you want to call it. Is it getting to you? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm feeling it more. Sorry, go ahead.
So like they would deem it dark social, and they'd be like, it's unattributable. You can't really like architect or things like that. But dude, you drove $7 million in pipeline from this architecting the word of mouth strategies. How the heck did you do it? Like, how did you look at it? One, hearing all the noise of saying you can't do it, but then you just proved it with $7 million in pipeline.
Yeah. There is something to be said about the first mover advantage that we talked about, right? I think we're one of the earliest ones coming out of COVID. We took advantage of knowing how much people just wanted to be in a room full of their peers and seeing that. I'll tell you the second thing that comes to mind. I'm always looking at it as like, what are the different touch points that we can get within this allotted time of a conference, right? So, for example, some people might just purchase a booth. Okay, that's one touch point. I really like that one too as well, because there's an expectation of being solicited when you're at this trade show conference and sponsors, right? So it's like, it's almost accepted. Whereas if you do that at a dinner, you're kind of like, really, man? Like, I'm just sitting down with my peers. So there's certain behaviors and patterns that are more acceptable in certain situations.
Yeah.
So, okay, but most people just invest in a booth. Some people say, hey, we never got ROI at a booth, so let's do these side events. Okay, you can do that, but then the gap that I just talked about, you can't really solicit as much as you can.
Right.
And then the dinners tend to have a more intimate feel. I'd say that's like more of like your maybe tier 1 ABM experience. Ideally, you're inviting like, tier 1 accounts to those dinners. And then there were the happy hours, right? Of just like being known as, I'm very proud we got to that point with Chili Piper. It's like, yo, are you going to the Chili Piper after party? And that was kind of the talk of the conferences for a while. So if you look at all of those 3 options, let's say, and I'm sure there's more that I can't think of right now, a lot of companies would just choose one of those avenues. We're very fortunate at Chili Piper where oftentimes our whole conference playbook involved all 3, right? So we'd get the opportunity to solicit at the booth. We'd take more of a tier 1 ABM approach with our dinners, but then we'd still kind of be the talk of the whole conference by having this happy hour. And I think part of the genius behind it, my manager at the time realized, hey, I have this sales guy in marketing, and we also knew what communities would charge. So I was able to offset a lot of our costs by selling sponsorships to it. And companies were so happy to pay because, for example, some of these communities would charge 20 to 30K for a dinner. We'd say, hey, why don't you pay us 5K or 10K in some cases? And we just reinvest that money into a dinner, make it really good, make it that good experience. And they're like, hey, we're happy to cut you a check. We don't have to use our own internal resources to like source people and all of this stuff. So I think understanding that like the more touch points you can get face to face and have different dynamics where one is like, yeah, you're actually trying to sell them at the booth. One, you're trying to give them a nice elevated experience with peers. And the other one, you're just saying, hey, kick back, relax. Let's have some drinks. Let's have some good, food and such. And coming out of the conference, I think it was so hard to ignore that. Yeah, I've been kind of Chili Piper branded in some way, whether it was like at the booth, at the dinner, or at the happy hour. And a lot of the time we were able to pull this off because a lot of people might be thinking, that's a lot of money that you guys are investing. It's like, yes, but it was so funny the one time like our RevOps department was saying like, they're looking at the data and they're like, field marketing is typically like one of the highest budget items within a marketing budget.
Right.
We don't seem to be spending a lot and we're driving a ton of pipeline through this. Like, can we do more of this? I'm like, yeah, tell the CEO so I can hire like more field marketers. And I was able to hire 2 more and kind of move into a different position. So I think based on that, I think there's timing, first mover advantage, and then thinking about how do we get in front of our ICP with these different experiences while at the conference. I think that helped a lot in driving 7 million pipeline.
Let's go. So part of your title is customer marketing, but the other part is community.
Yeah.
So what's your philosophy on community? Do you look at it as just another channel, or is it completely different in how you approach it versus everything else you do?
I don't think I look at it another channel. And I think like coming out of COVID, communities were pretty big because again, it was like one of the only ways in which we could engage with our peers. And they got super popular. I think over time, they almost became synonymous with this like Slack community, right? We have the Slack community, let's invite people to it. We'll have different channels, different interests. So I can't speak for everybody, but oftentimes when I think community, I'm like Slack communities, what Slack communities, right?
Me too.
I know there's other software that helps you create communities. We don't have that. I'm not saying I won't do that in the future, but coming into this, one of the problem statements that we're trying to solve with my role is how do we just get other customers to learn from other customers? So that's why I think it does go hand in hand with like the community and customer marketing part, because on one hand, I'm owning customer marketing, but then I'm thinking, how do we almost create a community amongst our customers? And that might just be different formats, different ways for them to engage. Like, and I'll tell you one thing, we were making a big bet on in-person. We're still going to do that. But as I'm interviewing customers, they're saying, yeah, in-person's pretty good, but like budgets are pretty tight. I don't know if we'd be able to like go to some of these. Like, have you ever thought about doing them virtually? It's gonna sound stupid, but I'm like, no, I haven't. I just had one of our first virtual user roundtables. I capped it at 8 customers only, so everybody could have like a voice. And it was so fascinating, like how they were all helping each other out. The other thing we notice is like they're much more vulnerable amongst themselves than they are with their CSMs. So even CSMs were learning things about their accounts that they weren't necessarily willing to share because maybe it's, I don't know, more of a business professional relationship, but amongst their peers. And they're also very, how do I say this? Like very direct, where in Storylane's case, we have kind of two different types of demos, the screenshot versus the HTML, like clone your product. And one guy was kind of saying like, oh yeah, like not a lot of people are going through the steps of our product tour. And then the way he described it, I didn't even understand it. But another customer chimed in. He's like, sounds like you're using screenshot demos. He's like, yeah, that's almost exclusive what I do. And then like 5 other customers jumped on board and they're like, no, like don't do the screenshot demos. You have to do HTML. And by the end of it, he's like, all right, my biggest takeaway like coming out of this is I have to use HTML demos.
Nice.
That's also an upgraded package and a premium package. But by hearing it from his peers, he was convinced that he had to use it, right? So I'm just looking for more formats in which I can get them to be a little bit more vulnerable. I can kind of moderate a little bit and say, hey, sounds like this is a challenge for you, and this customer over here, they actually solved it. Like, would you be willing to share? In person is going to be a big part of that. And then we quickly created like a customer newsletter where we can just keep them up to date about these upcoming events. A lot of them also want to see the product roadmap, product feedback. So now we're creating something with our CEO where they get more direct access to that. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't see it as separate. I kind of see it based on that problem statement of like, how do I get other customers to learn from other customers in different formats? And I might have a hypothesis of how to do that, but at the end of the day, I'm always listening to what the customers want. And they actually like kind of created this whole virtual user roundtable. And the first one we had, we're like, man, we might need to do this like once a week type of thing. Because it was so good, but we capped it to 8 people. And that was the other thing. I think I had like a 30% response rate with, like we're talking like 1% response rate on outbound, right? And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Like there's a need for this. People want to see more of this. So I think like oftentimes we might have a hypothesis or think like product direction, but at the end of the day, like your customers, the end users are going to tell you where you should end up going.
So I'm glad that I love how you responded to it. Like it really shows that you believe in the philosophy that you're talking about, that you don't just look at community as a channel. It's like there is no community without the customer. Like again, it's the backbone of everything we're doing. Mm-hmm. So if somebody wants to implement customer-led growth, what would the 30, 60, 90-day implementation playbook look like?
Yeah. The first one, it kind of comes back to what I was saying in terms of the mantra, ask and you shall receive. I think we don't do enough about asking our customers if they've even want to join a program like this. Put a customer advocacy menu in front of them. I kind of listed off a couple of things. Anything from G2 review to short quote on the website, written or video case study. Do you want to participate in webinars? Do you want to participate in person? Do you want to hop on reference calls, or do you want to be a referral? I'm probably missing a couple, but that's a great menu to start with. And just go by, I don't know if you have NPS scores or anything like that, send it out to your happy customers. I think you'd be shocked at how many are willing to participate in this. So that's kind of, let's call it day 1, day 30. Reach out to your customers. Then from that point forward, what I do is I typically book a 30-minute call with them. And maybe this is coming back to my sales side, but I always like to ask them, if they hop on the call, I say, hey, Isaiah, before we even get into this program, and I'm going to dive into like more about what it is. When you first saw that email, what made you even want to like join the customer advocacy program? So then I'm hearing their actual internal motivations, right? And this can range from a lot of different things. A lot of people say, you know what? I'm a huge fan of the tool. A lot of people just want to pay it forward. They're like, it's helped me so much. Like, we sell to marketers. So a lot of marketers I've realized have joined the program because they themselves want to create a customer advocacy program. So like, if I can learn a couple of things here and there, that's great. I think people are always looking for opportunities to showcase their skills, their smarts. So if you can put them on center stage, like you'll always have people that are willing to do that. I've also heard from, and this like is across personas, there's almost this internal pressure from their team of getting more public on LinkedIn. So in ways we're kind of trying to help them shape that and saying, sure, you can talk about Storylane, but maybe along the way we can actually teach you how to write good LinkedIn copy, be persuasive. And then ultimately some people have been straight up with me and saying, yeah, I saw the referral program. If I can earn 10 to 20% on that, like, yeah, I'm happy to do that. So yeah, interview the customers. And then from there, I'd say like one of the quickest, easiest things that you can kick off is like a customer webinar series. Make it only for your customers. Sometimes we actually do allow people that are in pipeline to check this out and hear from other customers as well. But like, if you do that customer advocacy menu, you're going to get a bunch of people back, and we only do it at like a monthly pace right now. So you might have an entire year of customer webinars if you do on a monthly basis, where I'm sure you get like 12 advocates. And then part of it is just, okay, let's showcase their specific use case, maybe talk about the results. But I think one of the most important parts of that is like AMA with peers, right? Or the Q&A portion. Just let them ask questions and kind of sell themselves without us having to be in the room and telling them why they have to use it. There's something to be said about it coming from the customer's mouth that is much more credible. So yeah, those are a couple things that come to mind in terms of kickstarting your program.
Let's go. Unfortunately, we're coming towards the end.
Okay.
Fun enough, we get to do lightning round. So
man, okay. I don't want to do one for each, but I'll do one before the lightning round.
Perfect. I'll take it.
Okay.
All right, so you get 30 seconds to answer each question. I might ask why, because I'm curious to hear more of your answer, but you ready?
Okay.
All right, let's go. Question number 1, most overrated B2B marketing tactic that you think needs to die?
Oh, man. Most overrated. Let's go with, I'm going to have to go with dinners, I guess, because I think too many marketers are doing them.
Okay. Question number 2, if you could only choose one, community, partnerships, or customer advocacy, which one drives the most efficient growth?
Oh, man. This one is killer. I'm between partnerships and customer advocacy. And I'll tell you why. I think like learning on the partnership side, so many other companies want to join forces, join resources, especially if you have complementary products and you can split budget. That's like interesting in terms of efficient growth. So I'll put partnership second, customer advocacy first.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 3, best advice for a B2B marketer who's never carried quota and wants to understand sales better?
Okay. I think you're always going to receive a surface level answer, but something that we've learned, hopefully you've learned in sales, is to always ask 2 to 3 layers deeper, right? It's like, help me understand that. I think oftentimes marketers or maybe junior level sellers will hear something from a buyer's mouth and take that as gospel. But I think if you can just say, hey, help me understand that a little bit more, like where's that coming from? You'll get a much better answer the second time around. So I think marketers can learn a lot from that.
This might tie a little bit into the next question, but you can pull a whole different one out the chamber if you like.
Sure.
What's the sales skill every marketer should develop?
Ooh, yeah, it was. Okay. That's, I definitely would say that. Yeah, maybe building along that curiosity. I think like you can learn so much more by being curious and not necessarily settling for the first answer. So yeah, maybe I'll piggyback off the other one.
I'll
Go
take
a little
it.
bit deeper.
Last question, just a little bit of a hot take. So in 5 years, will traditional demand gen even exist, or will it all just be community and customer led?
I think it will exist. I think like what I've realized, and even like when you ask customers if they know of anybody you can refer to them, there always needs to be some, like you have to stay top of mind, even when I was talking about the content engine. So I think those tactics help kind of nudge that customer prospect forward and stay top of mind. I do think, and this was part of the reason I switched over from sales to marketing, like I saw how people were coming way more educated than ever before. And it kind of scared the shit out of me as a sales rep, being like, if I don't have a good network of people willing to refer me, or if I didn't start to think more like a marketer in terms of short, medium, and long-term pipeline, because not everybody's in market for your tool, I didn't think I was going to sell anything in 5 years' time. But to answer your question, I think people always need a little bit of a nudge. There's so much stuff going on, whether it's business, personal life, global stuff. Like to assume that you're always going to be top of mind. I think like a sales outreach, ads, all of that stuff will have its place. I don't think it's going to be as effective, but I think there'll still be demand gen there.
Let's go. Yo, Arthur, appreciate you for having on the podcast. Same thing with Madav. Quick shout out to Storylane. Like, give a little elevator pitch about Storylane.
Yeah, I think, and this isn't even our positioning, so forgive me, Storylane. But one thing that I've seen, I think when you look at the website experience right now, you are very fortunate if 1% of your website traffic goes through your main call to action, which is book a demo, which means 99% of your website traffic is landing there and bouncing, and they don't have another way to kind of further engage with whatever your product offering is, whether it's, yeah. So the way I look at, this is one of the main use cases of Storylane interactive demos, is putting like a product tour on your website, getting them to that aha moment quicker, letting them see what it does from a jobs to be done framework. And we've seen click-through rates of some of our top customers like hit like 60%. So instead of waiting for like trying to funnel everyone through the book a demo sales-led motion, obviously I'm sure there's PLG companies listen to this too, and that helps. But I think getting that buyer to that aha moment quicker and just giving them another call to action to further engage with your brand, that's where I think a lot of our customers are gaining a lot of benefits through Storylane. So yeah, just give them other ways to engage with your company's offering, with the product on the website by giving them a tour there.
Let's go. Where can people find you if they need to get some more knowledge or wisdom on community and customer marketing?
Yeah, man. LinkedIn. LinkedIn's definitely like my only platform right now that I'm on. Yeah, hoping to start a podcast like you one day, and then share more of those insights in newsletter format. So right now, yeah, if you want to hear more about customer-led growth, follow me on LinkedIn, but there's some projects in the making to go a little bit more long form.
Well, it's been an honor to have you on. I'm going to let you go get some water flushes out your system and then go finish enjoying Austin while you're here for the week. But yeah, thank you, Arthur, for hopping on the podcast. I hope you all got some wisdom. I know I for sure did on community and customer marketing. But until the next episode of Sour SaaS.